This episode is brought to you by Cantiani Insurance Agency, insurance professionals specializing in home, auto, flood, and investment properties. They are the most referred insurance agency in Massachusetts. If you want coverage you can trust, call 508-791-2088 or visit cantianiagency.com. We also welcome a new sponsor, Wizard Computer Services, providing outsourced IT and cybersecurity since 1997. Call 781-341-2222 or visit www.wizardcpu.com for more information. New England's cybersecurity experts. The mailbag. 3 questions on today's podcast. First question of the 3. An important question, and a question I think a lot of people need the answer to. What are some of the biggest mistakes that parents make? And that's in terms of just quarterback development for their kid, or just in general in the landscape of what we do and our parents that we're kind of steering this towards. What are some of the biggest mistakes that they make, and how can we avoid them?
I want to preface this by saying we're all parents now, and I think we all understand that we just want the best for our kids, and I think that's what we see 99% of the time is parents just want what's best for their kids. I'm going to go on the other side of it, like things that I've seen done well. I think you got to guide your kid. You got to be there for them and support them, but you also got to let them spread their wings and let them go a little bit. If I think about some of the success stories we've had over the years, or some of the kids that have really blossomed into great leaders and gone on to lead college programs, I didn't have a ton of contact with their parents. It was the kids communicating directly with me, whether it was at a young age telling me that they couldn't make it to a session, or trying to set up and schedule their sessions, and being proactive about setting things up, and then being proactive about getting film after, or asking questions and follow-up and feedback and advice, and just finding their own voice. I think that's super valuable at a young age, where some parents can try to take full control of that and maybe guide it a little bit too much. And then a kid gets to college and he's got to adjust, and he's now out on his own, and it becomes a lot for him. So guidance and helping them and guiding them, but a little bit more behind the scenes. Just for me personally, I think I've seen that really help kids, especially at an early age, because they just develop their voice, they develop their confidence, and it helps them blossom as an individual.
It's tough because you nailed it, right? I think that it's kind of in that nature nurture department of, like, you want the best for the kid, and you really try to put them and guide them to the best spot possible. And that's what every parent wants, obviously. But there's also certain levels to expertise in what we're doing. And it's hard to stand at a session and stare down your kid and try to listen to the coaches like you're one of the players, because you're not in the arena with them. They're trying to learn from us or their coach at school or wherever they're playing, and they're doing the best that they can. So let the coaches coach and really try to take that step back. Obviously, you want to work as much as you can with your kid, and if they want to train off to the side or throw, outside of training sessions and practice, that's great. But we talk about it even with kids all the time, is the ability to practice skills correctly. Like, it's very easy to go through the motions and doing something that might not actually be the right way to do it. And then all of a sudden you become the guy who practices bad habits. So something that we want to avoid at all costs. I don't know, Stez, you wanted to touch on that one at all, or if you wanted to take over what you saw, some of the mistakes.
I think it's a tough subject to talk about for me, because I don't want to come off as like I'm telling you how to raise your kid or how to parent your kid, because that's not right. But when it comes to like what we do and what we see, I think there is some things that hurt your kid's development, even though you might be thinking you're doing the right thing. Whether it's almost like trying to live through your son or your daughter, and it starts to become like you're forcing them to do things rather than letting them go out and do it on their own. And I think it takes the fun out of it. And when you take the fun out of it, I think it takes the development out of it, and it becomes more of a chore rather than anything else. And I've seen it as a coach, and I've seen it when I was playing. Some really great athletes that I played with across all sports, you see that they end up getting burnt out really quick, right when they should be just getting going, and it's because they've been pushed so hard. And whether it's, they're out there on the field and they're always looking over to the side like, oh, what's my dad think about that rep or that play or whatever, when in reality they should just be focusing on what's in front of them and the task at hand. Whether it's in the middle of a game, I've seen it in the middle of games, I've seen it in the middle of sessions, and it's like, as soon as you see that as a coach, you kind of know what's going on. And I think that it's detrimental to the player, which is unfortunate. And I always think, and I know we're going to kind of talk about camps and stuff as we go, but the constant comparison between parents when they're looking out at their kid, whether it's at a session or a camp or whatever the case may be, I think that can kind of hurt the kid as well. I'm sure you guys have seen all the stuff I'm talking about, so feel free to chime in. But the comparison thing, that could as well. And then pushing too early and kind of getting on them at a real young age attributes to the burning out. And then I think ultimately, full circle, you look at it, and when these kids are focusing so much and worried so much about their performance on the field, and they kind of forget about all the other things that are important, which is, being a kid, and whether it's just, literally being a kid or academics or the other stuff kind of starts to go by the wayside. And then you see negative things start to happen in that aspect as well.
Go ahead, Mike.
I think a couple things you said, like it's got to be driven by the kid. Like he has to love it and enjoy it, because if he doesn't, at some point that's going to lead to burnout. I think instilling good habits and holding the kids accountable at a young age, really important. But you can go overboard with that. A couple of things, like if I just think about like some of the kids that we've had, whether it's Dante Reno with Tony Reno or Ty Fine with Mickey Fine, who's the OC at Harvard, and Tony Reno obviously was the head coach at Yale for a long time. And when I started training Dante, I didn't even know that his dad was Tony Reno. Like it was all Dante reaching out to me, Dante coming to sessions. And obviously at that point, I was young in my career, and Tony Reno trusted in us without even talking to us, just through, studying us and seeing what we've done over the years. And he wasn't micromanaging the situation. He wasn't checking in, right? He wasn't trying to see what we were teaching, right? He just put full trust in us and Dante that, Dante was going to come and learn from us. And then you see on the other side of that, parents who, whether they haven't played the position or don't have a ton of experience, but they're trying to micromanage and teach and do all that. When I saw like a lot of coaches that have coached at the highest level that know a lot more football than me in some aspects, put full trust in us because they know that this is what we do 24/7, the development part of it, we live it. And that's our expertise. So they fully hand the keys off to us. And I've just seen that work better in most cases. And obviously individually it works different, a lot of different parenting styles and a lot of different routes to have success. But I think letting your kid blossom and kind of find his own path is definitely beneficial.
And there's nuance to this answer, because in some aspects you do want to be very educated on it, but like try as a parent, and it's easier for me said than done because JJ is nowhere near this point in his life, but trying your best to be a fan and not worry about like recruitment. The amount of times that I feel like I answer calls or texts about, what should we do in terms of recruitment, all of a sudden it starts to feel like a task. Like we need to get him here by this point at this time. Understanding development is not linear, nor is it the same for two people. Like we've seen kids from all aspects, all different backgrounds, all different timelines. Like these kids, they take Peter, for example. We just talked to Peter and it was February 15, 2024, and he's got 0 offers. You fast forward 2 years, he's got 35, right? Miles O'Neill was on a similar type of trajectory. Then he went to Hun School and all of a sudden he's at UNC playing for Bill Belichick. But previous to that, like, who knows, right? And again, like your kid could be 5'2", 110 pounds soaking wet as a freshman in high school. and he could be 6'4", 220 pounds by his senior year. So really try not to worry about that, because the answer that I'll give everybody on that one is prioritize him developing. If he loves the position and he wants to play at the highest level, he needs to just try to get better. And that's going to come through training and developing and learning and educating on the position. So don't worry about the recruitment. Worry about being a fan. I think that, them knowing and like you're in their corner, and you're not going to be worried about like, my kid needs to be a college football player. Like, that stuff's going to take care of itself. And we've touched on it before. They will find him, like, or her. Like, we have kids that have the ability to play at that level without question, and kids that right now are unsure, but that are going to blossom freshman year, junior year, maybe senior year. Let the chips fall where they may. I think that the most important thing is to make sure that they enjoy it. The recruitment piece of it, it's a product of development, and product of getting better.
I think the support thing is so important because it's such a hard position. It's an emotional position. There's a lot put on a kid. So to know that regardless of the outcome, good or bad, that they have that support and that sounding board and that, stable place and safe place to come back to and open up and have those conversations with their parents, I think is super important. That hit home to me because I think that's so important, right? Be a fan, be supportive, be loving regardless of the outcome or how you play or how you perform. Because some parents can overdo it with that, I think.
Yeah. I think ultimately too, like I'll leave it with this, is these kids are so lucky that they have parents who care about them and want the best for them. And they're so fortunate. As long as, you're doing it for your kid and not for yourself, right? Like if this is what your kid wants and you're doing everything you can to help them out, that's awesome. But just make sure it's for them and not for your own personal, wants and
Which
needs.
I think is
yeah.
like hard at times too. Like you see these kids have success, and you see your kid become really good at something. Like it's almost natural to try to like dig your paws in, and you're doing it out of, you want your kid to become the best that they can be, and you want the best for them. But it can be hard to like try and like, I know when my kid's of age to play like soccer or something, I'm going to be like, hey, why didn't you do this? But in reality, I don't know what I'm talking about. So I got to take a step back. But it's hard. I can imagine it.
Yeah. And I think like it's the hardest to be a quarterback parent is like the hardest thing in the world right now, right? You have to decide what camps you're going to go to, what showcases. Are you going to play 7-on-7? Are you going to stay at your public school? Are you going to go private? Like there's a million different decisions that need to be made that you need to fully maximize the off season and decide where you're going to spend money on doing what. Like there's so many decisions that need to be made, and it's extremely hard on parents, especially today. And so I see like people reach out to us for guidance, and we're open to that, and we try to help, and we don't always have the right answers. Like we're still learning, and it's an ever changing landscape, but it's hard. It's hard on parents. And the last thing, Al, is the sacrifice piece, right? Like these parents sacrifice so much to get their kids to sessions. And I try to remember that as a coach. Like I need to give my 110% max effort every time I'm there, because these kids are putting in so much time and effort and sacrificing funds, and their parents, right, are sacrificing nights and days and long drives and commutes to get them there. And I try to never forget that. And that helps me as a coach because I know how much these parents are sacrificing and how much they care. And it's amazing. And we have so many amazing parents that are just doing their best. Everyone's just doing their best. And I think that question raises a lot of good questions and a debate. But I think the more educated that parents can get, and the more you can look at different perspectives, the better off you're going to be.
Yeah. And you mentioned it just then too, like talking about selecting camps. So one of the things that we're getting to is, I guess the question would be like, are camps important for recruitment? But I think in reality, the twist I would make is what makes a good camp. So I don't know which one of you wants to take that first, but
Dr. Showdown.
how can you figure out what camp is best for your kid, and what are you looking for in a camp that's going to help your kid?
Yeah, I think it's hard. It's obviously individualized based on the kid. And I think one of the coaches we had on talked about it, but and we just touched on it a little bit, but try to get true and honest advice from coaches or people that you trust on a true evaluation of where they think you're at right now and what level that you are projected to play at. I think another really important thing is, what relationships have you developed with coaches? What conversations, actual conversations, have you had with coaches? And you'll know if they're valuing you, if they're constantly reaching out, how much they're interested in you. I think some kids get an invite and they're sent out all the time now, right? You get the generic invite to camps. And then you go to the camp and you never end up talking to the coach, and you're put in a group on the other side of the field where coaches aren't there watching, and it ends up being a waste of time, right? And when you just allocated all these funds to travel there, plane ticket, hotels, and then you leave there and all you got out of it was a t-shirt, right? So I think it's really hard, but I think two things, right? You don't want to burn yourself out and do too many camps, but you also want to get your name out there. I think there's a lot of different camps. There's mega camps, right, where it can be great for some kids because you're going to have a ton of coaches from all different divisions, and you can start to develop those relationships. So I think like hitting one of those is good. Finding the right one is important because some are run better than others, and you're going to get more reps and you're going to have those opportunities. But then I think the college camps as well are super important with the schools that you have those solidified relationships with, or a school that you could really see yourself realistically going and playing for. And that's not always going to be a Division I FBS camp, right? And then the other thing is cast a wide net. If you're not sure and you don't have that person in your corner to help guide you, then maybe you hit a Division III camp, you hit a Division II camp, you hit a Division I camp, maybe a mega camp, and see what coaches kind of gravitate towards you and generate those relationships, and then go from there.
One of the bigger pieces of the camp thing is like, in terms of recruiting, like, have you had dialogue with a certain coach? And I think that this is kind of where self-awareness, plays in a little bit. Is like, maybe I'm not a Division I player. Maybe I'm not a Division I player right now. Maybe I'm not a Division I player in general. Maybe it's going to take a lot of time to grow. College football is very hard at all levels, JUCO through Division I, FBS. It's extremely hard, and the best kids play. So looking at it through the lens of like, all right, well, I haven't had much dialogue with anyone from a Division I school, or maybe it's the FBS school, but, I've had a few conversations with, a couple FCS guys. Maybe I'm going to go to their camp. I know their quarterback coach already. I'm interested in the campus. These are things that, kind of factor into play. And then, like you said, the mega camps, and then we have our showdown, which the registration was just released and it's filling up quick. It's like camps where, we're focusing a lot on development still, like that piece of, trying to get better and help you learn and take you through drill work that's going to enable a feeling and help you get better as a quarterback. But also you're going to have eyes on you from all levels. And it's going to be, specific to what you do. Like a lot of quarterback coaches, a lot of offensive coordinators. You have to have, you're doing a little research, through these camps to figure out who's going to be there. What positions are going to be there? Is it kind of an isolated position camp? And that casting the wide net portion of it, like you're kind of killing a few birds with the same stone in that aspect of you're getting that development piece, you're getting that, hands-on, where you're talking to coaches and the dialogue's there, and we make time for them individually to be able to speak with you if they're interested. And even if you just approach them and it takes off, all of a sudden, you're on campus taking a tour and you've applied and you've been talking for 6 or 7 months, and now you just got to get, first good 3 for film. These are the type of things and the type of questions that you should be asking. Like, if nothing else, like, am I at least going to get coached up? I think that that's an important one, because ultimately we just want to get better. And then if it is that recruitment piece, like, it's not too hard to tell, like, is this a mass generated email versus is this specific to what I want to do? Do I know these guys? Can I trust these guys? It's like I remember back in the day going in English class. It's like, is this a good source or a bad source to use? Like, it's very easy to tell. Like, you just got to do a little bit of research. You got to look into it, and you got to know what you want ultimately. And that's how you narrow down your search. You shouldn't be camping every weekend for a summer. It should be, you pick out a handful of schools that you're interested in. You go get on campus that are attainable for you, maybe a couple reach, and you go on campus and you compete and you see how you stack up. And if coaches are talking to you there and you're having a good dialogue, then it could end up being a good fit for you. If you go and no coach coaches you up and there's 100 kids in your line and you get 12 reps, it's probably not a good camp. So there's nuance to it, and you have to understand and know yourself and be self-aware, but know what you want to get out of it. And if you can do both, great.
Yeah, I think you brought up a really good point with like trying to find out or identify as much as you can, like, because you'll see these flyers posted of all the schools that are coming. But with a lot of the mega camps, right, it's not your position specific coach that is going to be there. So they're not recruiting the quarterbacks at that camp. I know from experience with our camp, that's one thing we really try to do is like, we have quarterbacks, receivers, defensive backs. So those are the coaches that are going to be there, like from all divisions. The majority of the coaches that are coming are either the OC, the quarterback coach, or the head coach. So they're the guys calling the shots, making the decisions, being able to give that offer. So I think that was a really good point there.
Yeah, you guys made a ton of good points, and I'm not just going to sit here and repeat what you said, but just my 2 cents. I think, like Mike said, it's very individualized based on where you are in your development, where you are in your career, age, recruitment, all that stuff obviously comes into play. And obviously, like Al said, like I don't think that you should be camping all summer. Like, what's more important for you is, what is it going to be going to a camp and trying to get exposure, or is it going to be staying back and training and getting better and sharpening the axe?
Or even at that point with your team, right? Developing that camaraderie and timing and all of the things, those team activities that go on in the summer that some of these guys miss out because they're at 15 camps, and there is burnout to it.
Yeah. I will say this though, like I do think there is value in betting on yourself when it comes to these camps and not being afraid to go and like take a chance and see what happens. Even if you do go to a camp where you haven't talked to a single coach that's going to be there or whatever the case, all it takes is, one throw or one play or one impression on someone to get the ball rolling. So I don't think it's a bad thing. But I think if you're spending all your time trying to get noticed at a camp, you might be better off spending a little more time with development, whether it's with yourself or your team or whatever the case may be. But I don't necessarily think that betting on yourself and putting yourself out there is a bad thing. I think that confidence can be a good thing in this area.
Yeah, and like you just said right there too, like both Coach O'Brien from Virginia Tech and Coach Lamb from Virginia mentioned, I'm going to be able to watch you take 2 throws in a t-shirt and shorts and know if you can play at my level, right? So if they're watching you and they're not, either interested at the time or starting that dialogue, then like Stevie said, like it's time to go back to work. It's not your time yet, right? If you think you're that caliber player and you're not getting those talks, like those guys are professionals in what they do. And they're going to know, right? So there's definitely a balance to it. Like you want to reach, you want to go camping, you want to get in front of people, but you also got to make sure you're ready to roll when that time does come around. Quick shout out to our sponsors over at Lowney Sports. I've known Tim personally, and he's been a longtime supporter of both youth and high school athletes. He's also an attorney of over 25 years and both an NFL and NIL agent. Many think NIL is expensive, unnecessary, or that it only matters once you have an offer, but there's a lot more to know before the scholarships and deals start coming. To contact Tim for a free NIL consultation, call 617-733-8313 or visit lowneysports.com.
M2QB Academy is also a Wilson brand affiliate. When you're buying Wilson merchandise, go to the website, click checkout, and plug in our promo code M2QB-456 and save some money with your purchase.
And then last, but certainly not least, this is a hot topic, just in everything, really, but specialization in sports. Should quarterback, I want Stez to start this one, but because I know you got some good thoughts on it. Should quarterbacks be playing multiple sports, or should they be focused on just the position and getting better year round?
Yeah, I think obviously this is a very hot topic and a tough question to answer, but I think it depends on where you are in your career. Age, like I just said, is super important. I don't think that playing a ton of sports as a young kid is a bad thing at all. In fact, I think it's a good thing. Whether you might be getting bigger, stronger, faster in different areas depending on what sport you play. But you're also learning new things, new life lessons from coaches and the atmospheres and all that stuff. So I think it's a good thing at a young age. And even getting up until the early years of high school, I don't think it's a bad thing, again, for instance. But if football is what you truly want and quarterback at the next level is what you truly aspire to be, you definitely have to be careful, especially once you're getting to that age, junior, senior year in high school, where those are like some of the most important years in regards to like getting to good tape out there and getting your name out there and putting for good film on the board. So I think that playing other sports at that level, at that point in your career, can be detrimental, especially when you look at things like burnout. They're going into a football season after just playing baseball, and then before that they're playing basketball, and they don't get a break. And it's just constant compete, work. There's no time off. You know what I mean? So they're just going from sport to sport and not getting a chance to debrief. And then obviously you look at things like injury. All it takes is one rebound, you come down and you twist your ankle or you pop an ACL, and guess what? You're missing that next season of football, and you're not going to get film out there. You're not going to be getting exposure and talking to coaches and all that stuff. So I think there's so many things that go into it, and I don't think that being a multi-sport athlete at a young age is a bad thing at all. In fact, I think it's good. But as you start to get older, I think it definitely can be something to look at and kind of weigh out your options and the good and the bad.
Yeah, I've seen kids have success doing it both ways. I think, like you said, super important, especially at an early age, to expose yourself to as many different sports, teams, roles, like Matt Hasselbeck touched on, like being the best player on the team, but then also not being the best player on the team, and how do you handle that role, and camaraderie and learning how to interact with teammates and coaches. And there's obviously crossover in athleticism from sport to sport. So I think super important. And obviously you see in the NFL, like a lot of those high draft picks and guys that are having success are guys that have played multiple sports. I just think you have to be able to manage it. If you can manage it and still have time to, once you do get older and you realize, all right, I think this is the route I'm going to take and this is the sport I'm going to pursue at the next level. Am I able to develop year round in some aspect of that sport while still playing these other sports? Because you see kids do it all the time and they can handle it and they can manage it. And like Hasselbeck touched on, then you become really good at time management, right? And then when you get to college and you're just focusing on one sport, like it's almost easier. So I think it can definitely be done, but I've also seen it the other way where kids kind of lose their off season because they have so much going on with their other sports and they're not able to, whether it's make it to training or make it to team events or make it to team lifts. And it's different for every kid. Every kid can, handle it differently. And then there's kids that only play two sports and then they trim it down to one by their sophomore or junior year. And they've gone on to big programs and had big time success. So I think the specialization, there's obviously value to it, but I think it can be overdone as well. Like if a kid only plays one sport and he's always only played one sport, I think there are elements that you miss out on that you get from playing multiple sports. So it's a balance and it's a challenge, and I don't think there's a right answer per se. I think it's obviously an individual case-to-case basis. But exposure, especially at an early age, I think is super important. And the burnout piece plays a role on the other end. If you're just specializing from a young age and that's all you're doing, if you fall out of love with it or that passion goes away, then you don't have anything. Where if you've exposed yourself to multiple sports and you're playing different things year round, maybe you didn't think you were going to be a baseball player, and then you end up, developing late and having a ton of success later on, whether it's junior year, senior year, and then you end up going that route. And you would have never known that if you specialized in something that you thought was going to be your top sport at an early age. So I think it's tricky, but I do think there's a ton of value in playing multiple sports.
I agree, but I think the most important piece that you and Stevie mentioned was like at an early age. I think that playing multiple sports, and it is individual, but playing multiple sports is gonna equate to the trait that I'd like to talk about a lot is like the ability to move and the ability to like be fluid through movement. And I think that we gain that through playing multiple sports. Like you can tell when a guy's a hooper, and you can tell when a guy, does shot put. Like there's a difference there. Like some people are really explosive through, different types of movements and how that
Baseball too.
translates. Baseball too, right? Being a pitcher or being a really explosive, guy at the plate. Um, so I think that it does translate. Like I think playing other sports can translate to the position. As a coach, and James mentioned this as his favorite trait when we did the draft, was being a good mover. And I like being able to extend plays, but not only that sense is moving in the pocket and being fluid and, being able to transfer energy and create energy in different ways. And that comes from learning these things. Like the amount of times I've equated something in a session for quarterbacks by relating it to a different sport, probably once a week, right? Where I'm like, no, it's more like this. Like if I'm swinging a baseball bat, like I'm not trying to launch into this throw. I'm not trying to push into my front leg. I want to be short and rotate. And so I think that a lot of those skills can be developed through multiple alleyways early on. Um, that said, I do think when you're a certain level of prospect or a certain, you're competing against guys that are doing it year round. Like the guy we talk about, the guys in California and Texas and Florida, and they're training to be a quarterback. And it's a little bit different down there where they're football, and it's football in the spring and it's football in the summer and the fall and in the winter. If you want to be able to compete, I think that, like Mike said, there needs to be time to train and time to continue to develop skill. And sometimes I think that people talk about specialization like it's groupthink. Like, man, I keep hearing this way. Everybody should play 3 sports. Like, I don't really agree with that. Like, I think it's very individual. I don't think it's necessary for certain kids. I think, like you guys said, at a young age, it's good. But I think it became somewhere along the way, it kind of became like buzzy to be like, yeah, play 3 sports no matter what. Like, you need to play 3 sports. Like, no, I don't think so. I think that you need to become really good at what you're really good at if you want to gain an edge. And if that's going to take sacrificing a sport that maybe you don't care about, get rid of it, right? Train. Time management is one of the best skills that we can learn as we go through life, not only as a quarterback, but like if you don't have time to train because you're playing a sport that you don't even like I remember playing basketball in high school because like that's what I was supposed to do. In reality, I was shooting 20% from the field and hovering around the glass to get 2 boards just to get my name on a stat sheet, playing 2 minutes and practicing all week when I could have been doing like that time was better spent elsewhere, right? For me, the individual. So I think that the specialization piece, like, I think that for certain kids, it's correct. But I think you get to a certain age and to a certain level to get there. But like if you're playing a sport that you're unhappy with and you're only doing it because somebody on a podcast told you to do so, like I'm telling you not to right now, and that's the wrong way to do it, right? It's up to you and to be the individual. But I just think it's somewhere along the way it became like kind of buzzy to just like let's just play 3 sports. It's like, oh, are you only saying that because the other guy said that? Like,
I think too,
I think
like
that you need to create your own thought on that.
yeah, I think too, like we're obviously thinking about it from a quarterback standpoint, and we know how much time needs to be allotted to grow and get better and develop. But at the same time, like parents and kids might be hearing this from other parents and kids where they're talking about a kid that plays a different position, like a lineman. Obviously, for an offensive lineman, like doing shot put in the off season is huge. That's a great way to become explosive. And
That's
wrestling, it relates. There's not a ton of sports out there that like directly to relate to being a quarterback. Like obviously, I think you made a great point out with baseball. I think there's a lot of balance and rotation in baseball, whether you're at the plate or you're throwing. But at the same time, a throwing motion with a baseball and a pitcher is a lot different than throwing a football, in my opinion. And I think that there's stuff that you could take away from it and use it to your advantage while throwing a football, but there's also habits you can develop with a baseball that are kind of tough to break when it comes to throwing a football. Plus the time management piece where baseball is all summer and you're playing a ton of games and traveling and taking time away from training football wise. But
wear on the arm too.
Exactly.
A lot of volume.
A certain rep count and
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's tough. Like take who you're hearing it from with a grain of salt. Like every situation's different, especially for different positions. And um, yeah, I think you guys made a ton of good points though, and I definitely agree with everything you said for sure.
I think with the high level recruit, Al, you brought up a good point, especially with the timeline now with the college football landscape. There a lot of these high level recruits are throwing for college coaches in December and January, and then they're coming to see them again in May. So they're trying to track the progress from the end of the season, whether they saw you in season or they watched your film, then they saw you right after the season throw, and then they're seeing you throw again in May, and then maybe they're seeing you in June for camps. They're looking to see that growth, and they're also like those 3 months, that window from December and then seeing them again in May, that can make or break it for a kid, right? You see a kid develop really good over 4 months, and then spring eval period comes around and boom, they pop 5 offers, of schools that they were really hoping to go to and get that opportunity at. So I think if you're a certain level of recruit and you're starting to get that attention, you need to prioritize development and maximize your off season, because those windows close quick and you get that one shot at it, and that can change your life, So if you're, like you said, playing a sport where you're not invested at all and you're just doing it because you think you should be playing 3 sports and you're not able to train and it's impacting you in that aspect, then especially for the quarterback position, Stevie, which I think you brought up a great point there, then that development can be hindered, and you won't see that year over year growth or even month to month growth that some of these coaches are looking for when they come and see you at the beginning of the offseason, then see you again a few months later.
Anything else you guys want to hit on? I think that was pretty good.
No,
It's perfect.
I love it.